Hello and welcome to the How the Fuck podcast. This week, I'm super excited to welcome Gavin to the podcast. Danny is the founder of Optidge, the digital marketing agency based out of Texas. And in this episode, we discuss two of Danny's expertise areas. One, SEO, very briefly, and two, paid social media. So this week, we focus on one social media ad campaign in particular, which is one that Danny and his team ran for the e-commerce jewellery company Degs Sal. A brand which is now B2C, but used to be available in major retailers like Nordstrom, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, for example. So a really big company and a really cool campaign to be working on. So Optidge ran a campaign across Facebook and Instagram for Degs Sal, and the results of this campaign were outstanding. They increased ROAS by 130%. They increased orders by nearly 300%. So when I heard this story, I knew we had to dig into the details behind it. In this episode, we cover how to build audiences that convert highly, why you need to design a full funnel across your advertising, and the importance of testing and experimenting with lots of different changes to make sure you're optimizing your advertising. Danny shares with us some examples of the copy he wrote and how they differ between different stages of the funnel. And we finish off with a look at what you should test and how much you need to be spending on testing when you're building an advertising campaign. And it's just 30 minutes long, so grab your coffee and enjoy the episode. Hi, Danny. Welcome to the podcast. Could you please start with just outlining your background really quickly?
Sure, Ben. So my name is Gavin, and I'm the founder and chief strategist of Optidge, which is a full-service digital marketing agency in Houston, Texas. So my background is I was born in South Africa, and my parents immigrated to the United States in the middle of the 80s. My family has been in the diamond business and diamond industry for over 6 generations. So long story short, but my dad was in the wholesale business, and then in the late 90s, he saw the internet as everyone else did as an opportunity. And he actually started selling diamonds online in 1999. So I kind of grew up in this world of e-commerce. I think I was in 7th or 8th grade back in 99, built my school's first website actually. So kind of grew up early. I had early experiences with digital and marketing. And then to go forward a couple years, I did my MBA, Master's in Business at the University of Houston from 2008 to 2010. And during that time, I had some really amazing practical classes and an awesome internship at blinds.com, which is one of the largest e-com sites in the US. And they were eventually bought out by Home Depot. And that experience really pushed me to say, hey, I want to be a consultant. I want to do digital marketing. So once I graduated in 2010, you think that you get an MBA and suddenly you're going to get a 6-figure salary at a huge corporation. Didn't happen for me, but I was able to go and start my small consulting practice. At the same time, I was helping my parents with their second foray into the internet with another website. And things grew from there. I went ahead and in 2011, I joined a web development company, and I developed the internet marketing department in that business for about a couple years. And then in 2017, we went our separate ways. They were focusing more on Fortune 500 companies. I was focusing more on small to medium-sized businesses, and recreated Optidge again. And 4 years later, thank God, the agency is bustling. We have a team of 10, and we're doing a lot of exciting things.
Wow, cool. Yeah, it is interesting that your family was in the diamond business for so long and then adapted to becoming e-commerce and the new digital age.
Yeah, it's cool how that sort of business and the family has adapted to the different situations, from site holders to cutting to wholesale to retail to e-com. So it's amazing to see how that has changed throughout the years.
Yeah, definitely. So you actually started Optidge quite a while back, but then it took a break and made a comeback.
Exactly.
Have you always wanted to start your own thing?
So I think the fact that my dad was an entrepreneur also came to the US and the American dream, coming with $2,000 and then building it up. So I kind of grew up in that environment. I never really saw a situation of a corporate world of getting a job. It was always doing your own thing. So I never really looked at myself as an entrepreneur, but I guess when you follow your passion, it kind of just led me there. I think some people are like, I want to start my own business. In my case, that wasn't necessarily the case. It was more like my passion is digital marketing, and I want to go ahead and do that. And it kind of just led me down that path. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Houston. The head of the marketing department invited me. So I've actually been teaching what I've been doing. So SEO, digital advertising, social media ads for the past 5 years. And that's really kept me in the game, because sometimes when you're running a business, you don't have the chance to stay in the weeds.
Okay, this should be a great interview then, because we get your expertise in teaching and your expertise in actually being in the trenches and the skill you've learned by helping big brands execute marketing campaigns. Before we go into a little bit more detail about your success story today, what is it that you would say are your specialist areas?
It would basically be two areas. So the first area would be SEO, search engine optimization, which means optimizing your website so that it shows up organically. That's personally my passion and what people know me most for. So that, I would say, is our first area of specialty. And the second area would be the digital advertising program, whether that's Google or Facebook. And the fact that we can do both, we kind of hit both sides of the coin. And yeah, so why us over some other agency? I think it's the group of people, it's the experience we have, it's the fact that we're not so large, we're more personal, our clients are not necessarily a number, and it's just our proven track record. So a lot of our business is referral based, and it's people, we have a great experience with a client, so they tell someone else and we move on to the next. So so I would say SEO and the digital advertising, both of those areas are a very strong suite.
Cool. Okay, good to know. I know today we're going to focus on the paid side and a successful paid media campaign that you were part of, but I'd like to just ask you one question on SEO. This is an area I love. I love SEO, and I love digging into kind of what works and what makes content rank in Google. So before we go on, is there an untapped opportunity in SEO, or a couple of things that are extremely important for ranking Google that aren't that well known at the moment?
It's funny because the foundations of what SEO are pretty much have always been the same. Some of the tactics change. Sometimes Google puts a weight on different things. So it really depends. And I'll basically bring up 2 points. One is the importance of covering the topic of the products or services that you're selling. So if you're a plumber and you provide water heater repair and drain cleaning and all these different things, most people think it's enough just to have that services page with a bunch of bullet points. But to really be an expert in Google's eyes, and Google want to show you, you need to have content that covers every single aspect. So most businesses feel like, I'm not a content producing machine. I'm not a Wikipedia website. I'm a plumber. But no, you have to have the content on your site. And I know it seems obvious, but most people don't do it. And they don't put the time and resource and money into developing the content to cover the full spectrum of the topic that they're trying to rank for. So that's number one. Number two, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Quickly interrupt there. Would that be something like the pillar and cluster model, where you take one and you do everything about that topic?
Exactly. So some people refer to it as a hub page, a spoken hub, or there's different ways of putting it. But yes, that is the general concept. And like I said, it's not a hidden or secret, but most people don't do it. So if you do it, it can make a huge difference.
That's a great point. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No worries. Point 2 is just something that's coming up that's really important for people to know about, is core web vitals, which are basically Google has always looked at your page speed and the loading of your website as an important factor. But this is the first time they've basically said that, hey, guys, beware, this is going to be part of the algorithm. You need to make a change. And there are basically 3 different measurements when it comes to core web vitals. We don't have to go through the specifics now, but one has to be aware of what is the speed, or what is the measurement that they have for these 3 metrics. And Google says that they might, even in the Google search results page itself, even have a little button or message or sign like that this website is fast, right? Or whatever. This site is one that's just, we have a mobile friendly. Is it mobile friendly? Is it not? But when it comes to page load speed, specifically on these 3 metrics, it's going to make a difference. So practically, if your site has a problem, does it mean you're going to drop on from the first page to the second or third? No, I don't think so. If you're head to head with a company or with a website and your metrics are better than the other, yes. Can that push the needle? It will. But I think the concept of the fact that Google's going to have that label saying, is this fast, is this not? I think that's going to make a difference. So people have to be very well aware of what's going on now and need to prepare for this now, because before you know it, it's going to be Q1, Q2 of next year. This official change is going to happen. And if you don't start now, you could be left in the dust. So people shouldn't think of it's the end of the world, but they need to take it seriously. But you have to realize that it's not enough just to open up your computer and then log on your high-speed internet and see, does it load fast or slow. Mm-hmm. But what you need to do is, because Google really judges it on, because most of the world, their internet connection is not great. right? So you kind of have to use Google's tools or an Ahrefs tool. I'm not sure if Ahrefs looks at these three core vital metrics, but all you have to do is go to Google's Page Speed Insights, which is a free tool. Type in your page there, hit analyze, and then you'll see like what you're ranking. And that will give you a good idea from Google's perspective. Are you passing those benchmarks or not?
That's an excellent point. And I think once you've dug deep into SEO, those are the really small things that matter quite a lot. Is there anything else on the SEO side that you think we need to know before we move on?
I just think that people who are interested in SEO, it's changing all the time. So it's important to keep up to date with the blogs and Google's like official webmaster blog as well. And then the SEO community on Twitter is pretty amazing. So if you are interested in SEO, going on Twitter and following the SEO experts and people in general, the SEO community is very friendly. Even whenever I have issues, like I'll DM people and people are really friendly to like answer questions. There isn't this feeling of I have to keep my cards close to my chest and not show anyone, which is really awesome. So because everyone's kind of in the same boat, we don't know exactly what Google wants, but so it's kind of like a team effort to kind of see what can we do to get there, which is pretty awesome. So it's a very special, unique kind of group and industry.
Definitely. I think I've seen that a few times, like on Twitter, just people talking about that. I think the Google even have their own Twitter, like about SEO.
They do. And they have their evangelists who are out there who also, you can follow them and they will come in and answer questions and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
That's cool. Okay, cool. Let's talk about Degs and Sal. You had a great success story with them and you saw some good results from your digital advertising with them. Yeah, can we dig into that a bit? Would you mind giving me some context around them and who they are and what you did together?
Sure, definitely. So Degs Sal is a designer men's jewelry and lifestyle brand, and they offer high-end rings, bracelets, and necklaces. And they're located in New York City. And for a long time, they were more of wholesale, right? But their jewelry was found in the big, the Macy's, the Nordstrom, all the big sort of department stores. And then they realized, hey, let's not just go ahead and put our jewelry that. Let's try to create a buzz and create a brand online and sell direct to the consumer. So they worked with an ad agency in New York and they weren't really seeing the results that they wanted. So through a referral, they found us and we got going. So this was basically the end of 2018 throughout 2019 and then to like the beginning of 2020. And long story short, their goal is that we came along and we wanted to advertise through Facebook and Instagram, and their goal was to have a 2x ROAS, which means that for every dollar that you put in, there should be at least $2 worth of sales. And we created an amazing ad program for them. And in the year of 2019, compared to 2018, they actually quadrupled the size of their business. So let's say if they made $1 in 2018, they made $4 throughout the whole year in 2019. So it was an extremely successful program, but basically harnessing Facebook and Instagram ads to create this demand and to quadruple the size of the business.
Wow, cool. And you ran all the ad campaigns for those?
Yeah, so our team ran it, and definitely I was involved, but I'm not going to take all the credit. But yeah, we did. So we were the main drivers of that growth. I think they did have some companies that helped them with email marketing and some other things, but the main drivers of that growth was the campaigns that we created and optimized and ran.
Cool. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more and dig into kind of what you did to make this success happen. Where did you start? Like, so when you started working with Degs Sal, where did you start to kick off your work?
Yes, that's a good question. So in this case, we actually had previous data, right? So we saw what the previous company was doing. And so that obviously gives us a feeling of where to start, because you can see what has worked in the past. But in general, the way that we approach it is, and I think we can spend a decent amount of time on this, is that what's really important when it comes to Facebook and Instagram advertising is creating a funnel. And what that means is that people aren't necessarily, this is not Google where people are I'm looking for men's jewelry. Mm-hmm. Here we're interrupting people. So we need to create a funnel and match that up to the different stages of the buyer cycle. So there's the awareness stage of people just finding out about it. And then there's people who watched a video or they maybe commented on a post or on an ad, but they haven't actually clicked through. Then you've got those groups of people who have clicked through and have been to the website, but maybe they've only been to the homepage. And then you've got those people who have gone to a category page, but haven't put something into their cart. Then you have the people who put something into the cart, but they didn't purchase. And then you have the people who purchased just once, but they haven't purchased a second time. So think about it. We have people all along this journey. And the trick here is that we need to group the people into separate groups at each part of the journey. And at each level, we have to have different messaging. We have to have different maybe offers. And the idea that people have to get is that it's not enough just to show an ad on Facebook, and that means suddenly people are going to click and buy. But be aware, people are at different stages, they act differently, and you have to help move them along the journey. And when you have this comprehensive funnel advertising, that's when you can see success. If you just focus on one area or two areas, or you have your messaging going to be the same at all points of the funnel, at that point in time, you are not going to be successful. So I think this is the area that we really came in and made the difference. And then it allows you to scale. But I know I'm talking about a lot of different things, so I'm going to hand it over to you. Kind of what do you want to dig in further?
I think I want to firstly know how you target those people specifically. How do you know where they are in the stage?
Oh, cool. So that's a great question. So you're going to start off with advertising to people, and we'll talk about, you've got two groups. One is just purely based off of interests and targeting and demographics. So we've got people who are interested in jewelry or are interested in other high-end products, right? You can create many different audiences. And then you also have the audiences like your old customer lists, which you can upload into Facebook and then create targeting. You can make lookalike audiences, which we can spend more time about. But that's kind of like the beginning of the funnel. Then based off of that, you've got a pixel or a tracking code on your website, and you can isolate audiences based off of that. So I can, in Facebook itself, I can isolate people who have interacted with my ads, but have not gone to my website. So I can make that bucket. And then I can actually make sure that I have my including rules and my excluding rules. So the including rules would be anyone who's interacted. The excluding would be anyone who's been to my website, exclude them. Then you would do the next thing. People who have been to the website, but then exclude anyone who's been to a category page. So by using rules within the advertising platform, you can isolate those different groups. But it's a combination of data that Facebook has and then data of your website to create those different buckets. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the key there is to get the Facebook pixel.
Yes, it's really important. It's funny because I have a client now who we can't put a Facebook pixel on their website because they're like a franchise. And like half the game here is being able to put the pixel on and use that data just to send people to a site and then hope that it's going to work. And it never works. Never works.
Yeah, because you can't exclude people. You can't include people if you don't know where they've been before.
But not just that, but what Facebook basically does is, depending on the type of campaign you make, they optimize accordingly. So what that means is if Facebook knows who is a buyer, so if someone actually purchased, they can analyze the characteristics of that buyer and find more people who look like that. If I am just sending people to the website, what Facebook is basically saying is I'm looking at the characteristic of the people who go to the website and find more people like that. So you can imagine the characteristic of someone who comes to the website can be very different to the characteristic of the person who actually ends up buying. So if I cannot track who that buyer is, I can't find more of those people. So it's quite fascinating. That's why it's so important to get the data, because the advantage of using a tool like Facebook is they are really going to study who those buyers are and then go look at the audience and find the people who are most similar. Think about it. Facebook knows the type of content you like. They know the pages that you follow because they're having cookies and different things like that. They know the websites that you visit. We know all the stories where like you're talking to your wife about how you want to go golfing, and then suddenly you see the golfing ads the next day. So they're most probably listening to what you're saying as well. So think about it. They've got 100, and let's just give an example. They have 150 data points on every single person. So if they see that Danny bought a piece of jewelry from Degs Sal, and these are his 150 data points, they can now go and find people who have a 75% match. They might not have the exact same 150 data points as Danny, but they have the same 125 data points. There's a pretty good possibility that if we advertise to this person, they're going to do the same thing that Danny did. And yes, it's not perfect, but that's kind of how it works.
So it's all about increasing your exposure to that person, to that type of person, seeing if that does work, then learning from it.
Exactly. So we always say it's the creative and audience match. It's finding the right audience but also having the right ad to match that audience. So that's the equation. If you can find the right audience for your products and services and the right ad that matches that audience, then you're in business.
This is actually a problem I have with advertising. Sometimes I don't know what it was that went wrong. How do you analyze that? Like, was it my creative or was it my audience match?
Very good question. So the answer to that is why testing is so important. And the way I like to put it to my students in general, it's if you think of it like the stock market. If you go in and invest all your money in Apple and Apple goes down, then you're messed over. But if you take that same money and put it into 10 different stocks, yes, some will work, some won't. But you might find the one that works really well and you'll go with it. Same thing in advertising. We have to divide up and test 5 audiences, 10 audiences. And in every audience, we need to try 4 or 5 different creative combinations, maybe 2 different images, 2 different types of copies for 4 different variations. Then, yes, if you set up your campaigns that way, for sure, in the beginning, you're not going to be profitable because there are going to be things that don't work, but then you know what works and what doesn't, and you can take the things that work. So it's the same thing on like Shark Tank, right? These guys, they invest in 10, 20 companies on Shark Tank, but only 1 or 2 end up making them money. Same idea here. That's why if you break things down, whether it's in the data, in the analysis of the data, but also setting up the campaigns, you'll be able to see what works and what doesn't. And then the trick is, how do you then take those things that do work and scale them and put more money into it and turn off the things that don't? But the key is you have to set up your campaign that way. If you literally put all your eggs in one basket, if you put all your audiences, let's say you've got 10 audiences and you put them all in one thing, you're not going to be able to tell which one worked and which one didn't. That's why you have to spread it out. And that's a huge part of the key to the success when it comes to social media advertising.
That's a perfect explanation of why it's really hard for you to not have a specialist do this. For me to actually take enough time out to make really good Facebook ads it's really difficult. Like, to do all that testing takes so much time. It's hard to carve out time to have that focus.
Exactly. And so it doesn't mean that someone like you couldn't do it. It just means that it's like with Google Ads, obviously there's time required to optimize and things like that, but it's more passive. You can get away with more. If you only looked at it once every 2 weeks, especially after, you can get away with more. But in Facebook, it's a grind, man. It changes and you need to be on top of it. So yes, ideally you need to have a lot of time available, or to use an agency or a specialist, or hire just one person to do it, because that's the time that's really required in order for it to be successful. I think it could be misleading that all I have to do is create an ad campaign, I'll be successful. But with Facebook and Instagram and social ads, there is much more time required in order to see the fruits of your labor.
Definitely agree. So what is it that you think makes a good ad creative on Facebook?
So I think that number one, you need to test long versus short copy. Sometimes we usually say, like at the beginning of the funnel, sometimes longer copy is required because they don't know who you are. But that's a really important thing to test, because sometimes it's the longer copy that works. Sometimes we think, oh, no, you got to get it into 3 lines. But no, not necessarily. Sometimes you might need like a paragraph or 2. And so that's an important part. When it comes to imagery, you want it to be something that stands out. It's going to stop. When it comes to colors, you have to realize if the color of your ad is going to just blend in with Facebook, people aren't going to stop to see it. So you've got to make sure that works as well. When it comes to videos is, I usually see that it's something that's more top of funnel. The nice thing about it is people who watch your videos, you can retarget. So that's talking about that funnel perspective. But a lot of these things you have to try. There's no real right. You kind of have to see what's the best combination for you. It could be that a video for you works really well. For some products, customer testimonial videos are really strong. Like we have one client where traditionally, like I said, videos don't necessarily result in direct conversions, but we've got one where I think it's like a minute long, and it's like a compilation of 5 different unboxing / customer testimonial videos, and it does really, really great. So it's what I like to say is keep your eyes open. Look at the ads that are being shown and have inspiration. Get that inspiration to see what's going on, but you have to test. There are some best practices, but you got to test to see what will work best for you.
Definitely. I think with any kind of advertising, data is at its core, testing and experimenting so that you know what you can get right and you don't waste money. Something you mentioned there about long copy being for people who don't know much about you yet, and kind of just changing the copy for different stages of people. How does the message change? Do you have any examples of copy that you can share with us?
So for Degs Sal, I'll read to you, actually have here, so like longer copy versus short copy, and we can analyze it a little bit. But so for a longer copy, this would be something like modern by design and simple in style. Degs Sal's unique pieces are inspired by timeless classics from cultures around the world and rooted in our tradition of artisan craftsmanship. From our first collection in 2012 to being featured on multiple covers of GQ, we remain committed to delivering a wide selection of handcrafted Italian jewelry at reasonable prices. Whether you're stacking pieces daily or just looking to subtly enhance your style, you'll find the perfect piece to complement any look.
Okay.
So when you look at that, that's long copy, but it says everything. If you want to know who Degs Sal is, bam, we got you. So that works really well for introducing people or people who are higher in the funnel. But to have something like that to someone who you've already been to your website, does it make any sense? No, not really. So then you want to maybe go with shorter. So a shorter example would be embracing bold designs inspired by timeless classics of cultures around the world, from our first collection to the cover of GQ. Refine your style with Degs Sal, handcrafted Italian jewelry without breaking the bank. So there, it's not a, as they say in Yiddish, a Megillah, but it's short to the point, and you get to the point. So it still says everything, but maybe that's something that's more like middle of the funnel, or it could be more at the end. And then at the end, it's not necessarily about the messaging, but it's more like, does this person need more of a push? If I give them a 10% off coupon, will that get them to go from the cart to actually purchasing, or getting them to go to the cart? So that's when, you, especially with brands that have are more of a higher end brand, to throw in discounts or offers at the beginning, you don't want to do. You want to set the stage at who they are and introduce the brand. And then only as they're further down the funnel, maybe you want to introduce some offers or discounts to actually get them to close the deal.
Interesting. Makes a lot of sense. Do you ever do like direct, like show a product in the ads?
Oh, for sure. Another cool aspect of Facebook is if you have the pixel set up and you provide Facebook a catalog of your products, you can actually do dynamic product retargeting, which is a form of retargeting, and I'm sure you get this as well, but like you saw this specific bracelet, then now on Facebook in the ad, we show that specific bracelet. So we do a lot of specific product marketing, specific at the retargeting level, but at the intro level, you would. But only once you know. If I know this person has visited rings, then I'm going to show them more ring-based ads. At the higher funnel, you don't really know yet, unless there's a specific audience that says these are men who love rings. Then it can be very specific product shots. But overall, the higher you are, the more general. The lower you are in the funnel, the more specific you can get.
That makes a lot of sense. You're absolutely right. It's like generating awareness, but then once you've got someone at the end who is shown clear intent and what they want, just showing that to them is going to be more effective. But
yeah, so like what I like to say is like a lot of this is not rocket science, right? These are not like the secret hidden. This is like marketing 101, but it's using the tools and using it in the right way in order to get that outcome. And like you said, most people don't have the time or effort to build the campaigns in this way. So, but it's necessary. If you want to truly be successful, you have to structure it in this format.
Definitely. Do you think Facebook's still a good channel for every kind of business, or is it mainly like B2C?
You'd be surprised. We do a lot of B2B business as well, and we've seen success on Facebook. In the end of the day, the question is more not the platform, but more about, can you find your audience there? Is there a way to target your audience on the platform? Yes or no? That's my answer. Whether I'll never say to someone that if you're B2B, LinkedIn, if you're B2C, Facebook. No, it's more, can we find our audience there? If we can, let's do it. And we can see B2B results on Facebook.
Interesting. I think I'm a bit biased because I don't really go on Facebook anymore, but other people don't, but obviously that's not true.
Obviously Facebook skews older, but I've seen campaigns where it works also for younger people. Like we actually ran for a pretty cool organization, OpenStax, which provides free textbooks to college students. And the idea is, instead of college students having to pay hundreds of dollars in textbooks, why not use textbooks that are free, right? So they can save money. And they recently ran a campaign called Free the Textbook, which basically means that a lot of universities are secretly adding in the textbook fees within their tuition. So students don't know about it. And they basically want to educate people like, hey, stand up against the university. You should have the right to choose what textbook you want to use. Kind of interesting, a little political maybe, but bottom line is we wanted, the campaign was awareness and getting students to sign up and be active in the cause. So you'd think college students these days, are they on Facebook? No, you wouldn't think so, right? It would be Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. But I'm telling you, one of our one of the best campaigns that we did was on Facebook itself. So we were like flabbergasted that 18 to 25-year-olds, we did really well on Facebook. So to answer you, I don't know. I've got some signals are telling me it's not a good platform. Some are telling me that it are. Once again, you got to try it out. Don't never close the door before you've tried it.
That's a great point. How much money do you think we should be putting behind every kind of test and Facebook ad to say that we've actually tested it out and it hasn't worked?
So I think number one, you have to realize that you need to have about $5 to $15 per ad set per day. Now, an ad set is usually, it will be a set of targeting rules. And like I said, you need to spread that out. So based on how you're targeting, you might have 5 ad sets, you might have 10 ad sets, you might have 20. But the rule of thumb is you want to spend about $5 to $15 US dollars a day per ad set. And then you got to see, in the end of the day, you kind of have to know what are you willing to spend on a lead or on a purchase. So based off of that, if you're willing to spend $100 on a lead or purchase, so you can let that ad set run if you're spending $10 a day for 10 days, and you might be willing to double that. I like to give anything 2 chances. So if you're willing to spend $100, you might be willing to spend 200 because you'll give it an extra chance. So there's not a necessarily exact rule, but with some of those ideas, you can get an idea of how long you should run and what sort of money you should invest into a Facebook or Instagram advertising campaign.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Is there anything else that I guess that I should ask? What do we need to know about? Anything else that we've missed that I need to know about before let's say I'm about to start a Facebook ad campaign?
I would say to do good audience research. It's important to make sure that you really find all the different audiences that are out there. And there's actually a really cool tool that Facebook provides called an audience insight tool, which was built so that people could look at their audience of their Facebook page and kind of see what's going on. But what's cool about this tool is that you can add one of the audiences that you're looking at, and it will show you the breakdown or makeup of that audience. So what are their interests or what are their like? So an example that I like to give is if I'm targeting skiers and Facebook has this audience called ski lovers, and I put it in the audience insights tool, and then I see what are the pages that these people like. And if the pages that they like are skiing in Vail, skiing in Switzerland, if all of their interests are good, then you know that audience is truly representative of skiers. But if I stick it in and what they like are cooking, children, and whatever it is, but like totally not related, then you know that even though Facebook says that this is an audience of skiers, but it's not really representative of skiing, so don't use it. So you don't want to go crazy, but to do the proper audience research and use the audience insights tool and get a really good idea of the audiences that you select and what they represent it's worthwhile to do ahead of time. And then obviously, if you have any customer lists or any data to leverage those so that you can create lookalike audiences within Facebook, which once again, that means if I upload a list of 100 people who've purchased from me, Facebook can then go and find anywhere from 1 to 10% of the population who closely match that group. And those are very powerful. So to leverage lookalike audiences is one of the specialties of social ads, and you should use that.
It's actually a fascinating and extremely powerful use of Facebook's data analytics platform, and I'm definitely going to take advantage of that. We've come to the end of about 30 minutes, and Danny, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been extremely insightful walking through your Degs Sal use case. I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing all those tips with us. I know that any Facebook ad campaign I do in the future is going to be 10 times better, so really appreciate that.
Pleasure, Ben.